Have you ever asked yourself why the richest, most influential people in history chose to rise before the sun, long before the world demanded their attention? Is it discipline, superstition, or some hidden formula of success? Or is it something far deeper, an understanding that the mind, like a garden, blooms only in the quiet hours, before distraction and desire begin their relentless assault? Most people wake to the chaos of the world and mistake that noise for life itself. The rich, the powerful, the disciplined, they rise before it all. They greet the silence. They meet the first light with intention, not obligation. They understand that the earliest hour is not simply a number on a clock, but a battleground where destiny is claimed, where the soul aligns with purpose before the mind is hijacked by triviality. Napoleon Hill wrote that definiteness of purpose, clarity of desire, and relentless focus are the engines of success. The Stoics, centuries earlier, taught that the mind must be trained, controlled, and anchored in reason before the body is drawn into chaos. The fusion of these truths is where the secret lives. The early hour is a crucible, a sacred space, where desire and discipline converge, where the subconscious mind begins to take orders, and where calmness transforms into unstoppable momentum. Most people awaken to react. They awaken to emails, alerts, obligations, complaints, the persistent tyranny of the urgent. The rich awaken to create, to build, to think, to design the life they will inhabit long before the masses stumble into theirs. The early hour is the laboratory of the mind, the place where ideas are conceived without interference, where fears have not yet been fed, and where the imagination has a chance to work unmolested. Consider this: every sunrise offers a choice. You can roll over and drift, letting the day seize you, or you can rise and seize the day. But rising is not merely a physical act, it is a mental declaration. It is an affirmation that you will govern your inner state, rather than letting the world govern it for you. This is the art of calm power. This is the fusion of Napoleon Hill's vision with Stoic self-mastery. In those first hours, rich people do not chase money, they chase clarity, they chase focus, they chase alignment. They do not attempt to control the external, for they understand that the external is ever-changing, often cruel, and rarely obedient. Instead, they control the only thing that will ever determine their trajectory, their inner world, their thoughts, their emotions, their attention. Napoleon Hill emphasized that your subconscious mind accepts whatever you impress upon it, whether fear, doubt, or belief. The Stoics emphasized that your reason is your citadel, capable of maintaining peace regardless of circumstance. When the mind is cultivated in the early hour, the subconscious is programmed for possibility rather than panic. Goals become magnetic. Obstacles become temporary. The person you wish to be is quietly, invisibly constructed while others sleep. This is why so few succeed. The early hour is not comfortable. It asks for sacrifice. It asks you to face your mind before the day's distractions offer excuses. It asks you to endure the silence, to sit with your own thoughts, to confront doubt and distraction with calm focus. Most people are too afraid of the stillness to rise. The rich embrace it because they understand that mastery begins when the world is still, when no applause is present, when no external validation exists. Imagine a mind waking to purpose while the world sleeps. The thoughts are sharper. The imagination is unclouded, the desires are clarified. The subtle patterns of life, the opportunities, the lessons, the hidden connections appear first to those who greet the dawn. Every idea, every insight, every step toward extraordinary success begins here, in the sacred silence before the world screams for your attention. The early hour is the invisible advantage. It is the silent preparation while others squander their mornings in distraction. It is the crucible of self-discipline, the proving ground of mental resilience, the laboratory where belief becomes action. Napoleon Hill would call it the program for the subconscious. The Stoics would call it the exercise of reason over impulse. Both lead to the same outcome, a mind that is not simply awake, but fully alive, fully sovereign, fully powerful. Most people believe wealth is accumulated through luck, inheritance, or opportunity. They do not see the quiet daily rituals that compound over decades, the early hours spent reading, reflecting, visualizing, planning, and cultivating self-mastery. They do not see the hours of mental and emotional investment that precede visible success. They cannot, because they have never trained themselves to rise before the world. Rich people wake up early because they understand a truth the world ignores. Time is the only resource that cannot be replenished. Every hour squandered is lost to entropy. Every sunrise missed is a battle conceded. The early hour is where the seed of extraordinary life is planted, not in grand gestures, not in loud proclamations, but in the disciplined, deliberate use of a single unshared hour. Calmness is the companion of this practice. Rising early is not simply a mechanical act. It is an emotional and spiritual declaration. It says, I am not a slave to chaos. I am not a prisoner of distraction. I am the architect of my own day, my own mind, my own destiny. The early hour demands this calm. Without it, the ritual becomes rote, the practice hollow, the potential wasted. When you rise before the world, you learn something that cannot be taught by books, mentors, or lectures. You learn that the mind obeys structure, that emotions obey awareness, that the body obeys habit. You learn that life is malleable, not because the world bends to you, but because your own inner power has been quietly cultivated while others slept. Napoleon Hill called it definiteness of purpose. The Stoics called it virtue aligned with reason. Together they teach that early rising is not a habit, it is a manifestation of inner mastery, a daily assertion of sovereignty over your own existence. It is a declaration that your life will not be dictated by external chaos, but by the disciplined unfolding of intention. Most people will never understand this. They will call it obsession. They will call it fanaticism. They will call it unnecessary. But the rich know better. They know that fortune follows preparation, that success requires alignment, and that the early hours are the most fertile ground for cultivating the mind, the spirit, and the destiny.
And so, when you ask why rich people wake up early, the answer is not simple. It is not about productivity hacks, routines, or efficiency. It is about something far deeper. The recognition that true power is cultivated before the world demands it, that mastery is forged in silence, that greatness waits for those who claim it in the hours when others surrender to sleep. To rise early is to step into the arena of the mind, to train your focus, to sharpen your vision, to prepare your character. It is to whisper to your subconscious, I am awake, I am ready, I am in command. Most people rise to live, but the rich rise to create, to dominate, to shape reality before the world has begun its clamor. They rise because they understand that calm, clarity, and deliberate action in the early hours are more valuable than wealth itself, for they create the conditions under which wealth becomes inevitable. And this is only the beginning. The early hour is deceptively simple. The world yawns, stretches, complains, and delays its engagement with life. But the rich do not yawn. They do not stretch in indifference. They do not allow comfort to dictate their action. They rise because they know that in these quiet moments, the mind is both malleable and receptive. The emotions are unclouded, and the spirit is attentive. This is the crucible of transformation, the forge where potential becomes power. When most people wake, they awaken to reaction. The first thought is often complaint, the first impulse distraction, the first habit scrolling or drifting. By the time the day has begun in earnest, their inner resources have already been depleted.
Energy has been lost to unnecessary battles, focus has been fractured by inconsequential noise, and the mind has been hijacked by what Hill would call fear and doubt, and Marcus Aurelius would call false impressions. They live as if the day is the master, not themselves. The rich, however, awaken into response. They greet the dawn deliberately. They do not allow the first moment to be stolen by urgency or external command. They understand that the mind is like a garden. The first seeds planted in the morning will determine the growth of the entire day. The Stoics would call this preparedness. Napoleon Hill would call it definite purpose. Both recognize that time, when honored and structured, magnifies the power of thought. In those hours, the rich create a sanctuary. They meditate, they reflect, they write, they plan. They visualize the life they intend to live with precision and clarity. Their desires are not scattered like autumn leaves in the wind. They are concentrated, focused, and aligned with reason. The early hour is a laboratory for the imagination, free from the clamor, free from distraction, free from the impulsive storms that define the lives of most people. Consider this: if the first hour is surrendered to chaos, the rest of the day is condemned to reaction. But if the first hour is seized, everything that follows bends to your design. Calmness, becomes a tool, not a state. Focus becomes a weapon, not a habit. The day begins with the mind anchored, the heart aligned, and the soul prepared. This is why rich people rise early, not because they love waking, but because they understand that mastery begins in silence. Napoleon Hill emphasized that the subconscious mind is the most obedient servant you will ever have. It accepts commands without judgment. It does not reason. It simply acts according to what you repeatedly impress upon it. The early hour is the time when the subconscious is most receptive. Thoughts planted in the morning grow all day. Fear, doubt, ambition, and purpose alike are amplified by the first moments of wakefulness. The rich know this, the unprepared do not. The Stoics taught that impressions are not facts, they are invitations to judgment. The untrained mind mistakes every fleeting sensation, every passing worry, every bodily impulse as truth. When you rise early, you create a space where your judgment is deliberate. You examine impressions before reacting. You meet the day with reason instead of impulse. The first hour is a rehearsal for the mind, a training in calm, a preparation for clarity, a demonstration that you are sovereign over your own inner world. Most people mistake activity for productivity. They fill the morning with busy work, caffeine and noise, and think they are advancing. But the rich understand a far more subtle truth. The early hour is not about doing, it is about becoming. Becoming disciplined, becoming aware, becoming the person who can create extraordinary outcomes. Action without clarity, effort without alignment, and energy without focus are wasted. The early hour corrects this. It aligns the mind before motion, the emotion before expression, the intention before execution. Imagine the mind of a person who rises while the city sleeps. They are not distracted by emergencies, by gossip, by fear. They are in dialogue with themselves, with their goals, with their future. Ideas that might have been buried by the noise of the day surface with startling clarity. Connections between problems and solutions appear effortlessly. The vision of the life they are building is no longer abstract. It is tangible, actionable, inevitable. This is the hidden power of early rising. It is not measured by hours of work or number of tasks completed. It is measured by the state of mind cultivated before the world begins to pull at your attention. Calm, clarity, focus, and alignment are the currencies of this time, and those who claim it compound their advantage relentlessly over decades. Napoleon Hill called it definiteness of purpose. The Stoics called it virtue practiced consistently. Together they reveal a profound law. The state of your mind at the first hour dictates the quality of every subsequent hour. The subconscious becomes obedient. The emotions become manageable. The imagination becomes constructive. The body becomes energized. Success is no longer a hope. It becomes a mathematical certainty, the inevitable product of disciplined preparation. The early hour is also a crucible for emotional mastery. Most people wake into anxiety without knowing it. They begin their day feeding doubt, worry, resentment, and reactive impulses. These emotions compound, shaping behavior and decisions before reason has even had a chance to speak. The rich wake calm. They practice stillness before activity, focus before stimulus, intention before reaction. This is why their energy lasts longer, their decisions are sharper, and their outcomes are disproportionately greater than their peers. There is a sacred solitude in the early hour that the world does not offer at any other time. It is a silence that teaches more than any lecture, more than any book. In this solitude, the mind is a blank canvas, and the thoughts you choose to place upon it are the brushstrokes that will paint the day and eventually the life you desire. The untrained will sleep through this. The awakened will rise to it. Every great thinker, every successful entrepreneur, every legendary leader knew this instinctively. Benjamin Franklin, Jack Dorsey, Oprah Winfrey, they did not rise early to impress. They rose early to train their minds, to shape their destiny, to conquer the internal chaos before the external chaos could interfere. This is the Stoic principle of self-mastery married to Hill's law of definite purpose. The inner world determines the outer world, and the first hour is when the inner world is most malleable. Most people think mornings are a nuisance, a minor inconvenience to be endured. The rich think of them as a battlefield, not a battlefield of struggle against others, but a battlefield of the self. Here, the mind is trained to respond rather than react. The emotions are harnessed rather than unleashed. The desires are clarified rather than scattered. The body is awakened before the day's demands exhaust it. Every sunrise is an initiation into self-sovereignty. Calmness is the ultimate weapon in this war. Rising early is meaningless if our mind is still chaotic, if your heart is reactive, if your attention is fractured. The early hour is only powerful when combined with mastery of the self. Napoleon Hill would argue that success is impossible without a controlled mind. Marcus Aurelius would argue that virtue is impossible without discipline. Together, they show that early rising without calm is merely noise. Early rising with calm is transformation. When you rise early, you learn to embrace discomfort. The bed is warm, the world is quiet, your body longs to linger in ease, but the awakened mind refuses. It knows that ease and comfort are the enemies of greatness. The early hour is a form of voluntary suffering designed to strengthen the mind, align the soul, and sharpen the focus. The rich understand this, the mediocre resent it. And in these hours, invisible progress is made. Thoughts are clarified, goals are prioritized, emotional triggers are neutralized, subconscious patterns are reinforced toward achievement. The world will never see this. They will only see the results, extraordinary focus, relentless execution, and the calm authority of someone who has begun each day as a master of themselves before it even begins. The moment you rise while the world still sleeps is the moment you declare to yourself, I am the master of my mind. I am the architect of my day. I am awake while others are unconscious, aware while others drift, decisive while others falter. This is not arrogance. It is the recognition of a truth that few ever grasp. Life rewards the prepared, the disciplined, the calm, and the relentless. The early hour is the laboratory where these qualities are forged. Most people think productivity is measured by hours spent or tasks completed. The rich know it is measured by the state of mind cultivated before the world intrudes. The first hour is sacred because it sets the tone for every interaction, every decision, every choice. If you begin scattered, reactive, and anxious, the day will unfold in chaos. If you begin calm, focused, and intentional, the day becomes an extension of your inner order.
Napoleon Hill wrote that the mind can be turned into a factory for fortune when thoughts are directed with clarity and faith.
The Stoics wrote that reason is the only true measure of freedom, and that the soul cannot be disturbed if it is governed by virtue and awareness. In the early hour, these two principles meet. Your mind becomes a factory of disciplined imagination. Your reason becomes the captain of your emotional vessel. Calmness is not passive. It is an active, strategic deployment of your most valuable resource, your attention. The rich rise early because they understand that the day will demand energy, focus, and composure. If these are squandered in the first hour, the rest of the day will be spent chasing, reacting, and compensating. But if you invest in calmness, clarity, and deliberate thought while the world sleeps, you compound your advantage exponentially. This is invisible power. This is leverage. This is what separates the extraordinary from the average. Every early riser knows a secret. The mind is strongest when the world is still. Ideas come unblocked. Problems resolve themselves in clarity. Creativity flows without interference. Fears, anxieties, and reactive impulses are quieted by the conscious act of waking deliberately. Napoleon Hill Wall say the subconscious is being programmed for success. Marcus Aurelius would say the rational mind is asserting sovereignty over the self. Together, they create unstoppable momentum. Consider the mechanics of the day. By 9 a.m., most people are already reacting to emails, calls, notifications, and obligations. Their energy is drained, their focus fractured, their subconscious programmed by distraction. The early riser, however, has already completed their most important inner work. Their mind is calm, their vision is sharp, their emotions are steady. They have won the battle before the battlefield is even visible. Discipline is not a punishment, it is liberation. Rising early is not a chore, it is an act of sovereignty. The bed is soft, the body resists, the mind lobbies for delay, but discipline whispers, "This hour is yours, claim it." This voluntary hardship builds the inner architecture that cannot be shaken by circumstance. It trains the nervous system to endure, the mind to focus, the subconscious to obey. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort to train the soul. Napoleon Hill practiced deliberate thought to train the mind. Early rising fuses these principles into one act, the conscious conquest of the self. It is the declaration that the day will not control you. You will control the day. In control is the precursor to wealth, influence, and mastery. The rich do not rise early for show. They rise because they understand the multiplier effect of 1 hour lived consciously while others sleep unconsciously. That 1 hour compounds into clarity, composure, and creativity. It compounds into decisions made from calm rather than panic. It compounds into opportunity, noticed and seized. It compounds into invisible habits that over years produce extraordinary results. Most people think they need inspiration to act. The rich know that discipline precedes inspiration. The early hour trains the mind to act with intention, long before the day demands action. It builds the mental muscle to remain calm in chaos, focused in distraction, and persistent in the face of adversity. It transforms potential into kinetic power. Imagine sitting in the stillness of 5 a.m., the world silent, your mind uncluttered, your goals clear, your desires aligned with reason. In that hour, your imagination becomes a weapon, your clarity becomes a shield, your focus becomes a compass. You are not simply awake, you are alert, present, and intentional in every fiber of your being. This is the inner advantage that cannot be outsourced, cannot be imitated, and cannot be stolen. Napoleon Hill would call this definite purpose in action. The Stoics would call this virtue practiced consistently. Together, they teach a timeless truth. The outer world yields to the inner world. Success does not arrive randomly. It is magnetized by minds that have been trained to see, anticipate, and create it. And the early hour is the most fertile time for this magnetism to take root. Discipline without calm is futile. Ambition without clarity is chaos. Desire without direction is distraction. The early hour trains all three simultaneously. It allows you to feel your desire without panic, to move toward your vision without anxiety, to take control of your mind before the world demands it. The rich rise early because they understand that mastery of the self is non-negotiable if mastery of the world is to follow. The first hour is also the incubator of emotional resilience. In the quiet before obligations, fears surface without mask, doubts appear without distraction, old patterns whisper their deceit. Most people ignore them, suppress them, or escape them. The early riser confronts them deliberately. They observe, reflect, and respond with reason. This is how calmness is trained, how patience is strengthened, how character is forged. You cannot control the world, but you can control your response to it. You cannot dictate events, but you can dictate the state of your mind. The early hour is the laboratory where this control is exercised. The mind is sharpened, the emotions are tempered, the subconscious is programmed for success, and by the time the world awakens, the early riser has already claimed the advantage that others will spend the entire day scrambling to find. The richest, most successful people in history did not wake early by accident. They woke early because they understood that the most powerful battles are fought in silence. That the first hour is the truest measure of self-mastery. That calm, deliberate focus before distraction arrives is the engine that drives extraordinary results. The rest of the world is living reactively. The early riser is living deliberately. When you rise early, you align desire with discipline, ambition with calm, and vision with action. You harness the quiet energy of the morning to construct your life with precision. You do not wait for opportunity, you create it. You do not wait for circumstances to align, you align yourself. You do not wait for inspiration, you summon it through deliberate practice. In this, you begin to see the reason why the wealthy, the powerful, the disciplined rise early. They understand that life is not fair, the world is not waiting, and success is never accidental. They rise because they know the day will not bend to their will, so they bend themselves, their mind, their spirit, and their actions to the rhythm of victory before the world even notices. The early hour is not merely a habit, it is a crucible, a laboratory, a sanctuary, and a proving ground. It is where calm meets desire, where reason directs passion, and where the invisible groundwork for extraordinary life is laid. To rise early is to step into the arena of mastery before the battle has begun, to claim the advantage no one else sees, to program your mind for achievement before the world demands it. There is a sacred rhythm to the early hour, a pulse that beats beneath the surface of consciousness. The world sleeps, the mind is unclaimed by distraction, the body is quiet, receptive, and uncorrupted by external chaos. In this rhythm, the rich awaken, not to obligation but to mastery. They rise to train their minds before the world can hijack their attention, to shape their destiny before the day conspires to dilute it, to conquer the internal landscape before the external landscape becomes a battlefield. Napoleon Hill emphasized the power of the subconscious mind, the fertile soil into which thoughts are planted. The Stoics emphasized the ruling faculty, the part of the mind that observes, judges, and governs. Together, these principles reveal a truth almost no one practices. Your first hour of wakefulness is a period of maximum receptivity. Every thought impressed upon the mind in this hour is magnified, amplified, and given life. Calm, clarity, and intention are not optional. They are essential. Most people allow their first hour to be stolen by chaos. They rise into anxiety, clutter, and obligation. Their minds are bombarded before they have a chance to direct their attention. Fear, doubt, and distraction seep into their subconscious like poison. By the time the day begins in earnest, they are already on the defensive, reacting to the world instead of creating it. The rich rise early because they understand that the internal landscape determines the external reality. In the early hour, calm is not a luxury, it is a weapon. The first moments awake the proving ground of self-mastery. Emotions surface, unmasked, unfiltered, testing the mind's command over itself. Desire, fear, frustration, and ambition all rise together, seeking expression. Most people react. The rich observe. They sit in the quiet, breathe, and allow their rational faculty to lead. They see the impulses, acknowledge them, and decide which to act upon. In this deliberate engagement, power is cultivated. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort to strengthen their will. Napoleon Hill advocated organized, persistent thought to harness the subconscious mind. Early rising is a fusion of both. It is voluntary discomfort. The body resists warmth. The mind resists idleness and organized thought. The mind is given purpose, vision, and structure. Together, these elements forge a daily ritual that is invisible yet transformative. It is the discipline that compounds faster than money, reputation, or influence. Imagine this. The clock strikes 5 a.m. The world is silent, and your D is awake. You have no distractions, no obligations, no interruptions. In these precious minutes, you review your purpose. You visualize your goals. You meditate on your character. You reflect on your past, clarify your present, and orient yourself toward the future. Every thought is deliberate. Every breath is intentional. Every movement is aligned with vision. This is the laboratory of excellence, the silent engine of extraordinary achievement. The rich understand that clarity of thought is more valuable than time spent. Hours of distracted activity are worthless. Minutes of deliberate engagement are priceless. The early hour allows the mind to move from reaction to creation. Fear is transformed into courage, anxiety into resolve, desire into action. This is why the same few hours that others waste determine the trajectory of a lifetime. Napoleon Hill emphasized the power of definiteness of purpose. The Stoics emphasized the governance of impressions. In the early hour, these principles intersect. You set your purpose with precision and guard your mind against impulses that would derail it. By rising early, you insulate your vision from chaos, your ambition from doubt, and your spirit from compromise. This is why the rich value mornings above all else. There is also a subtle spiritual element to early rising. In silence, the soul speaks. Without distraction, intuition is heard. Without urgency, clarity emerges. The first hour becomes a dialogue between desire and discipline, between vision and reason, between the conscious self and the subconscious mind. It is here that the richest cultivate not just wealth, but alignment between mind, body, spirit, and the trajectory of their lives. Most people mistake busy work for progress. They confuse motion with momentum. The rich do not. They know that the earliest hour is not about doing, it is about being disciplined, being aware, being aligned, being calm. From this state of being, action flows naturally, decisively, and powerfully. The day becomes an extension of preparation, not a reaction to circumstance.
The early hour also trains resilience. When you rise before comfort, when the world is still and your body protests, you confront yourself in raw form. You meet your weaknesses head-on. You challenge inertia. You embrace discipline when it is inconvenient. This voluntary mastery of the self is what allows calm to become second nature. Fear does not disappear, but it becomes manageable. Doubt does not vanish, but it becomes powerless. You emerge ready, steady, and relentless. Napoleon Hill taught that thoughts backed by emotion become reality. The Stoics taught that impressions unchecked become tyranny.
Early rising fuses these truths in the quiet. The mind is directed, emotions are disciplined, the subconscious is impressed with clarity, purpose, and vision. When the world awakens, you are already in command, already ahead, already operating from an inner fortress the unawakened cannot access. Calmness, cultivated in the early hour, multiplies everything. Decisions are sharper, creativity is clearer, patience is deeper, focus is more precise. Relationships are navigated with composure. Challenges are met with strategy rather than panic. Opportunity is recognized instantly. The mind, body, and spirit are synchronized, producing results far beyond what effort alone can achieve. Most people will never understand this. They will complain about waking, resent the sacrifice, or search for shortcuts. The rich understand that shortcuts do not exist when it comes to mastery. Success is the product of daily, invisible investment, early rising, deliberate thought, calm composure, and disciplined action. The first hour is the multiplier that makes the impossible inevitable. Rising early also builds mental autonomy. You learn to act before the world demands your attention. You learn to prioritize internal command over external demand. You learn that life will always impose chaos, but your mind is sovereign. When you train this sovereignty in the early hour, it extends into every aspect of life, work, relationships, health, and wealth. You are no longer a passenger in your own story. You are the captain. And the first hour is where the rich consolidate power that cannot be stolen. Influence, insight, and momentum all originate in these quiet moments. By the time others begin their day in reaction, the early riser has already created advantage, momentum, and alignment that compounds invisibly yet inexorably over weeks, months, and years. The early hour is more than a habit. It is a psychological weapon, a spiritual ritual, a lens through which the world is perceived and transformed. In these hours, the mind is most malleable, the emotions are least contaminated, and the spirit is clearest. The rich rise early not because they are motivated, but because they understand the architecture of human consciousness, the laws that govern thought, and the subtle mechanics of mastery. Napoleon Hill spoke of the subconscious as the fertile soil in which all outcomes are planted. The Stoics spoke of the mind's ruling faculty as the governor of the self. In the early hour, these two principles converge. The subconscious is programmed, the ruling faculty exercises authority, and the mind becomes a harmonious instrument tuned to precision. Every thought impressed during this sacred time is amplified, every emotion tempered, every desire aligned. The untrained wake to react. Anxiety, fear, and distraction shape their day before they even brush their teeth. Their emotions are hijacked, their focus is fragmented, their energy is consumed by triviality. But the rich wake to create, to plan, to reflect, to align. The early hour allows them to step beyond reaction into mastery, beyond chaos into calm, beyond impulse into intentionality. There is a spiritual intensity to this practice. Silence is not emptiness, it is power. The world sleeps, but the mind is awake. The imagination, unshackled, begins to see possibilities where others see impossibility. The subconscious, unpolluted by the noise of the day, begins to magnetize circumstances toward the vision consciously cultivated. In these moments, fortune is not accidental, it is inevitable. Calmness is the linchpin. To rise early without cultivating emotional composure is to rise into chaos. The bed is warm, the mind restless, the body resists. Every impulse seeks release. Fear whispers, doubt nags, laziness entices. Yet the early riser confronts this quietly, deliberately, and with unwavering resolve. The resistance is not external, it is internal. Victory is achieved not over the world, but over self. Napoleon Hill emphasized that faith in one's purpose must be backed by emotional intensity. The Stoics emphasized that reason must govern the passions. In the early hour, these principles meet in profound synthesis. The mind is not only awake, it is deliberate. The heart is not only alive, it is disciplined. Desire is not a wild flame but a controlled furnace, channeling energy with precision toward the vision. Most people cannot sustain this practice because it demands discomfort. It demands patience. It demands confrontation with oneself. They fear silence because it exposes their weaknesses. They fear discipline because it reveals their laziness. They fear early rising because it uncovers the truth. They are not in command of themselves. The rich embrace this fear because they know mastery begins where comfort ends. Every sunrise is a test. Will you surrender to the bed, the warm blankets, the pull of inertia, or will you rise, confront your mind, and assert control? The early hour is where the battlefield exists. The rich understand that the fight for success is fought in private, in silence, long before the public sees the results. This is the invisible labor that produces visible triumphs. In these moments, imagination becomes a tool, not a toy. Every thought is a blueprint. Every emotion is energy. Every intention is a seed planted into the fertile soil of the subconscious. By the time the world awakens, the rich have already constructed momentum, alignment, and clarity that will govern every decision, every action, every outcome for the rest of the day. The Stoics taught that adversity tests character. Napoleon Hill taught that desire backed by persistence conquers resistance. The early hour fuses these lessons. You wake into discomfort, discipline, and opportunity simultaneously. You practice calm while others panic. You practice focus while others drift. You practice intention while others react. In this crucible, character, clarity, and competence are forged. This is why the rich do not rely on luck. They do not wait for perfect circumstances. They do not hope the world will bend to their will. Instead, they rise early, cultivate calm, align thought with desire, and let the compounding effect of this deliberate practice create outcomes far beyond the reach of those who sleep. Fortune is attracted to those who are awake long before others notice the world has begun. There is a subtle transformation that occurs over time. Early rising cultivates patience, endurance, and clarity that become inseparable from the identity. Calmness is no longer a temporary state but a default mode. Discipline is no longer effortful but habitual. Focus is no longer conscious but intuitive. The mind, body, and spirit operate in concert, producing results that seem effortless yet are born from invisible rigor. Napoleon Hill called this applied faith, the combination of belief and deliberate action. The Stoics called it rational alignment, the consistent ordering of mind, emotion, and action according to virtue. Together, they reveal the secret. The early hour is not merely time, it is leverage. It multiplies your capacity to think, to feel, to act, and to attract outcomes. It turns ordinary minutes into extraordinary advantage. The early hour also trains resilience against distraction and temptation. When you rise before the world, you practice self-command in its purest form. You resist the body, quiet the mind, and focus your intention. The practice of self-mastery in these small, unseen moments accumulates into a life of extraordinary strength. Distractions that overwhelm the untrained scarcely touch the mind that has been disciplined in the stillness of dawn. Most people underestimate the magnitude of this invisible work. They envy the results, the wealth, the clarity, the calm, the influence, without understanding that every advantage began in solitude, long before the world demanded attention. The early hour is the proving ground where greatness is first won. It is the foundation upon which every triumph is built, the silent engine behind every remarkable life. The early hour is also a sanctuary of vision. Here, imagination is not chaotic, emotion is not unruly, and thought is not hijacked. It is a place to plan, to anticipate, to strategize, and to connect the dots that are invisible to those whose minds are scattered. It is where ideas first emerge, unpolluted, uncorrupted, and fully potent. From this fertile mental ground, the future grows. To rise early is to claim control over the one resource that cannot be replenished: time. Every minute surrendered is lost forever. Every sunrise ignored is an opportunity deferred. The rich understand that the invisible work done before the world stirs compounds invisibly, yielding visible advantage, clarity, and results that the unawakened cannot comprehend. In these hours, calmness and ambition coexist. Desire is powerful but disciplined. The imagination is bold but reasoned. Action is deliberate but unstoppable. The early hour teaches the mind to be awake without anxiety, focused without force, and persistent without strain. It is the synthesis of Napoleon Hill's vision and the Stoics' command over self, the secret foundation of every life of extraordinary achievement. Now, imagine the sun has not yet risen and the world is still. Silence presses against the walls of the mind. Your body urges comfort. Your thoughts threaten distraction. Fear whispers, doubt nags, hesitation lingers. But in this quiet you make a decision. You rise. Not because anyone commanded it, not because it is convenient, not because the world notices. You rise because you know that in this hour, in this crucible of stillness and discipline, you are being forged into someone unstoppable. Every second of this hour is a test of sovereignty over self. Will you yield to inertia, giving your power away to comfort, to habit, to the mindless flow of the world? Or will you stand calm and deliberate and claim the advantage that others will never even recognize exists? This is the moment the rich exploit. This is why they are ahead before anyone else has begun. They rise to dominate the internal world, because the external world cannot be mastered until the internal world is under command. Napoleon Hill called it definiteness of purpose. The Stoics called it rational mastery over impressions. You call it the beginning of the day that will determine the course of your life. Every habit, every decision, every ounce of energy invested in the first hour compounds exponentially. Discipline is multiplied. Focus is intensified, calm is reinforced. Your subconscious begins to obey. Your imagination begins to create. Your life begins to bend toward the vision you are daring enough to cultivate in the dark before dawn. The early hour teaches that success is not a product of circumstance. It is a product of the mind, the heart, and the spirit operating in harmony. It teaches that wealth, influence, and achievement are not random, but the inevitable outcome of preparation executed in silence. The rich do not wake early to watch the world pass. They wake early to shape it. They wake early to create what others can only dream of. They wake early to prove every day that mastery is not given, it is claimed. Calmness, cultivated in the early hour, becomes your shield against distraction. Focus becomes your weapon against mediocrity. Persistence becomes your armor against failure. Desire becomes your engine, but reason becomes your navigator. The world will throw chaos, resistance, and adversity at you. The early hour trains you to endure it, to rise above it, to transform it into opportunity rather than surrender. Every sunrise presents this choice: sleep and drift, or rise and claim. Every sunrise asks, will you continue to live reactively, or will you live deliberately? Every sunrise whispers, the first hour is yours. What will you do with it? This is where the richest, most disciplined, and most powerful begin. This is where you begin. If you refuse to remain average, if you refuse to surrender your potential, if you are ready to awaken the force within you that the world will never teach. Do not underestimate the invisible power of these hours. No one sees it, no one applauds it, no one can steal it, but every achievement you admire, every fortune, every triumph, every extraordinary life began here, in the silence, in the struggle to rise, in the confrontation with self, the invisible woe. Arcade done in these hours creates visible results that ripple outward, shaping destiny. You will be tested. Life will demand your attention, pull you toward comfort, tempt you to abandon discipline, seduce you into distraction. The bed will feel warm, the mind will resist, the world will call. But the question is not whether the challenge exists. The question is whether you will answer it. Will you yield or will you rise? Will you surrender or will you command? Will you drift or will you master? The answer lies in the quiet moments before sunrise, in the breath drawn deliberately, in the thoughts cultivated with intention, in the resolve that says, I am awake, I am calm, I am focused, I am in command, I am relentless, I am the architect of my life, I am the master of my day, I am the one who will rise before the world long before fate demands it and bend every moment toward my vision. No one can do this for you. No shortcut exists. No one will wait. The first hour belongs to the few who have the courage to claim it. This is where greatness begins. This is where the extraordinary separates itself from the ordinary. This is where you decide who you will be. Someone controlled by circumstance or someone who commands circumstance. Rise early, claim the silence, shape the hour, program your mind, cultivate calm, align desire with discipline, direct your thoughts with precision, face discomfort and embrace it. Observe your emotions without surrender. Command your subconscious with clarity. Build momentum before the world awakens. Create invisible power that compounds into visible triumphs. And do not stop. Do this again and again, day after day. Let the first hour define your life. Let the quiet forge your strength. Let the discipline shape your destiny. Let calmness be your constant companion. Let focus be your unbreakable weapon. Let persistence become your nature. This is your crucible. This is your advantage. This is your declaration. I will not drift. I will not surrender. I will not be ordinary. I will rise early. I will act with purpose. I will live deliberately. I will master myself. I will claim the life, the wealth, and the destiny that the world does not hand out freely, but only to those who are awake, disciplined, and relentless enough to take it. The sun rises, the world awakens, and so will you. Not because it is easy, not because it is comfortable, not because it is convenient, but because you are awake, because you are disciplined, because you are calm, because you are powerful, because you are ready. Rise, claim the hour, shape your life, be unstoppable.